Would anyone like to come up for a story this morning? Now there are so many this morning that what I need you to do, that's great. Yeah, if you can stay on the steps, and then if you want to come around here, Theo, you can come around here. Wow, I am so glad to see you all this morning. How is everybody? Are you awake?
No.
No. Are some of you awake? Oh, good, good.
Not better.
Are you a night person? I have one of my favorite stories to tell you this morning. And I have told this story before, but I don't know if any of you were here when I told it. But anyway, it's such a good story, it's worth seeing again. And no, it starts different. This isn't our usual piece of fabric, is it?
No.
This is very different. Because this story is a story that happened in a different land. In a beautiful, fertile, very great place to live. That's where this one happened. And this is the story about a queen
Oh, I remember this.
and a king. But it's not really about them. Not really about them. It's just that they're the first part of the story. And this queen and this king led all the people in this land with fairness and love and kindness. They were never at war, and there was never anyone. Do you think it might be Canada? And there were never any poor or hungry people. Everyone had exactly what they needed, but not too much, just enough. And all the people were very, very happy. But this queen and king were getting old, and they knew it was time for them to retire, to get a new one. Yeah. So what they did, they put up signs all over the land that said, "Wanted, a new king and queen must be strong, firm, fair, wise, and kind."
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, sounds pretty good. So they put these signs up advertising everywhere. And they had thousands of people apply to be the queen and the king of the land. Thousands. And so they had to decide who. And they finally narrowed it down to three couples. And so the first was Bart and Beth. Yeah. And Bart and Beth were strong and loyal and brave, and they had been part of the army that had made peace in another land. So that was Bart and Beth. The second couple were Mary and Mark.
They were really old.
And they were honest and loyal and reliable, and they had already been queen and king in another land.
So that might be them.
And then there was Anna and Adam. And they were noble and true and caring, and they came with really good references, which means people had liked them and wrote letters that said they were really good. So that was the three couples. Well, the king said to the queen, "They're all pretty good. I don't know how we're going to decide." And he said, "I know, let's give them a test. let's give them a test. And the couple that wins the test, that does the best, we will make them the queen and the king. And so the queen said, I know what the test will be. So she went to the kitchen of the palace and got 3 loaves of bread right out of the oven. Fresh and tasty. Doesn't that look good? And they gave each couple a loaf of the bread. And they said, you must care for this loaf. You must care for this loaf as you would care for this whole land. And you need to return tomorrow, and we'll see how you have done. You have a question?
What if they eat their bread?
Well, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. So, Bart and Beth said, this test is so easy. We can win this really easy. So, they got on their horses, and they got their swords because they had been part of the army in another place.
What's that sword?
A sword is like a big knife.
You know what a sword is? No, is that who?
Oh, there's her. Oh, sorry, I just said what is it? Yeah, so they got on their horses and they picked up the bread and put it in the pack on the horse, and they galloped away. Well,
I want to take them off the horses now. Oh, what's going to happen?
so they weren't worried at all because they knew that they had fast horses and no one was going to get their bread. And so as they galloped away, they galloped past this this old man who was very, very sick and alone, and they just looked at him and they just galloped right by because they said, there's no way that he's going to get our bread. And they got a little further down the road, and there was a woman with a young child, and the child was crying because the child was very hungry, hadn't had anything to eat for a couple of days. And they looked at them and they said, no, we were told we have to protect this bread, so they just galloped right
You should probably gallop them away.
right by them. I'm going to gallop them away. So they galloped right away and disappeared with their swords. Oops, lost a sword. Well, Mary and Mark thought, what are we going to do? How are we going to make sure this bread is safe? And they said, we know what we'll do. We're going to take it home, and we've got a great big vault. And so they went home and they put the bread in the vault.
How are you going to keep that closed?
And then they got chains and padlocks, and they locked it up with 50 chains. And how many padlocks did they have? 16 padlocks to make sure that that was safe in the vault. And then they stood in front of it and guarded it. Well, it wasn't long before this old man that the other couple had seen came down the road, and he could smell fresh bread. And he went over and he looked and he asked for some. But Mary and Mark looked at him and they knew that he could not, there's no way he'd be able to get into the vault, so they just said, no, sorry, and he just continued on down the road. A little bit after that, the mom with the little child came that was still crying because she was so hungry. And they didn't even notice that there was bread, and they just passed right by.
Why? They didn't smell the bread or notice.
They didn't smell the bread. And Mary and Mark didn't offer them any. Well, Adam and Anna, what they did is they put their bread in a basket. And they headed out and they thought, I wonder what we're supposed to do with this. And sure enough, they weren't very far before they came across this poor man who was very hungry, and he looked at their bread and he said, oh, that bread looks so good. Do you think I could have some? And they looked at him and they knew that he was hungry, and they're thinking, we're supposed to protect this bread. But he really needs some. We have to give him some bread. So they broke off a piece and they gave him the bread. And he was very, very thankful. Well, it wasn't very long after that. They got a bit further down the road. Did my mic go off?
Yeah.
I turned it off back.
Ah.
It's there now, right?
Yep.
And the mom and the young girl came in. The little girl was still crying. She was still hungry. Well, Anna and Adam looked at them, and there was no way that they could just walk by. So they broke off some bread, and they gave it to them so that they had something to eat. Well, every place they went, there was someone who was hungry. And they just kept giving their bread away. They just gave it away until it was all gone. So the next morning, Anna and Adam head back, and they're sure that they've lost. There's no way that they're going to win because they have no bread left. They have an empty basket. But they head back to the castle. And as they're heading back, I think my battery might have died.
Yeah, but these guys can't.
Yeah, my battery died. As they were heading back, Bart and Beth came galloping by, holding their bread high in the air, saying, ha ha ha, we survived all night, we still have our bread, everything's good, and headed right on to the castle. Meanwhile, Mary and Mark took all the padlocks off, took their bread out, which was still nice and safe and fresh, and they headed back to the castle. And so they all got before the king and the queen.
They're wearing different clothes.
Nope, they're wearing the same ones. And Bart and Beth said, we galloped all night, we never stopped for anybody, we just kept going, and here is your loaf of bread back safe and sound, just the way you wanted it. I think I called it. And Bart and Beth presented their loaf of bread and said, we locked ours up in a safe place, and here we are back with the safe loaf, just the way you wanted. And Adam and Anna looked at the queen and the king and they said, we're so sorry. We can't return the bread. We met hungry people and we gave our bread away. And we're very sorry, but we know that we haven't won. And the king and the queen said, Anna and Adam, you have won the test. Because when you cared for that woman and child, that was me. And the king said, when you I took the wrong robe off. Anyway, it doesn't matter. When you cared for that poor man on the street, that was me. You cared for the bread the way you would care for the land, with love. And you cared more for the people that you met than passing a silly test. You are the new Queen and King. And Bart and Beth were ticked right off and galloped away grumbling and complaining. And Mary and Mark couldn't believe, with all that they'd done, staying up all night protecting that loaf, and they went away upset too. And they took the signs down. I wonder how Adam and Anna felt when they suddenly realized that they were the new Queen and King. Do you think they were happy? Yeah. I wonder why they were chosen. Because they were caring. Yeah.
They thought how to keep them safe, which is like the not sure to keep it. Well, they meant that just like saying trying to trick them, and as whoever says, I know, but they gave away and acting is.
Yeah, they knew it was really the right thing to do, didn't they?
Well,
Yeah.
everybody gave their blood to everyone.
You mean if the others had done that?
Yeah.
I wonder what would have happened if they'd all given their bread
Another
away.
test?
Maybe there'd be another test. Maybe there'd be 3 queens and 3 kings.
Oh, God.
Imagine.
And if
Imagine.
one passed away, there's still 4 more, and
Yeah.
another couple of passed away, perfect.
Well, that's the story. And I hope you like that story. We're going to sing a song now that I need help with, and because it's a song that we get to shout in, and we get to move in, and we get to dance in. And to me, it's a song that would celebrate what happened here. And it's called "I'm Gonna Shout Out My Love for Jesus."